Hi guys, happy Tuesday. I'm going to continue with our story. You can look in your email later. Sorry about this morning. Having major difficulties the last few days with my internet and stuff, and then my computer crashed, so I'm having a tough time. And then I was in the backyard putting something in my garbage, and a snake slithered by, and you all know how I feel about snakes. I think we've had this conversation, so that wasn't fun. So here I am, finally, reading your story. We are on chapter 3 of Vampires Don't Wear Polka Dots. So chapter 3 is called The Haunted House. I'm going to read chapters 3 and chapter 4. A group of third graders met under the giant oak tree on the playground. The tree branches were like a tent above them. A breeze whispered through the golden leaves. "I think she's strange," Melody said. "Have you noticed her odd little smile?" "I think she smiles because she's nice, and her accent is really neat," Liza said. "I think her accent is freaky." "And what about the Romanian story?" Howie asked. Carrie nodded her head. "Why do you think her family had to leave? Do you think they're criminals?" Melody's eyes got big. "Maybe they're jewel thieves. That's probably where she got that big, huge brooch that she wears. Have you noticed how she keeps rubbing it?" There aren't many pictures, but there's a picture of them hanging out under the tree. Eddie reached over and pulled Melody's ponytail. "Yeah, she could even be a murderer," he snickered. "I bet she murdered all the kids in her last class." "Oh my God." Howie gave Eddie a push. "Be serious. We need to decide how we're going to treat Mrs. Jeepers." Eddie rolled his eyes. "I think you guys need to get serious. Mrs. Jeepers is just an ordinary teacher with a strange-sounding voice. As a matter of fact, I think she's an old-fashioned softie." "What do you mean?" Melody asked. "What makes you think that she's a softie?" Eddie leaned against the rough trunk of the giant oak and looked each one of his friends in the eyes. "Didn't you notice that she never once raised her voice today? And what about those sissy rules on the board? No mean teacher would think about using rules like that. She didn't mention one thing about pushing, hitting, or spitting. Any teacher who knows what she's doing would have really laid down the law. But all she did was smile that silly grin." "So what are you getting at?" Melody asked. "It's simple. We can get rid of one like we got rid of Mrs. Dee. His friends looked at Eddie. Slowly, Howie started to shake his head. "I don't know, Eddie. This time you may be wrong. Mrs. Jeepers might surprise us." Later, on their way home, Eddie, Melody, and some of the other third graders were walking down Delaware Boulevard. "Yuck! Somebody's moving into the Clancy estate. You couldn't get me to move there for $1,000,000. Melody shuddered. "It is sure a creepy-looking house. I bet it's haunted with ghosts and vampires." Eddie pretended to bite a couple of his friends on the neck. Melody shook her head. "I can't believe anybody would want to live there. They would have to be crazy." The whole group jumped when a voice from behind them came. "Good afternoon, children. I see you've noticed my new home." They all turned to see Mrs. Jeepers smiling at them. "You mean you're going to live there?" Howie asked. "Yes. Is it not lovely? Would you like to come in and see it?" asked Mrs. Jeepers. "No, thank you," Melody said quickly. "I have to get home to do my homework." "Don't be silly. I did not give you any." And here's a picture. "Any homework today." With that, she took Eddie and Melody by their arms and gently pulled them towards the heavy wooden front door. The other kids suddenly heard their mothers calling them and ran home as fast as they could. "It's so nice to have company. I do get lonely sometimes," Mrs. Jeepers said as she stepped out of the way of the two moving men. "Do you live by yourself, Mrs. Jeepers?" Melody asked. Mrs. Jeepers smiled and looked at the long wooden box the men were carrying through the basement door. "Well, not exactly alone, but it is quiet most of the time." Mrs. Jeepers pulled the reluctant pair into the front hall of the big house. A huge cobweb-covered chandelier hung from the high ceiling. A massive wooden staircase curved down to meet the dusty, blood-red carpet. Cobwebs clung to the walls, and a dusty mist filled the air. Is it not lovely? Mrs. Jeepers asked. I know it needs some work, but it really has a lot of potential. Yes, it's really nice, Melody lied. Would you like to see the rest of the house? We'd really like to. Maybe some other time, Eddie said quickly. You might want to clean up or something. We'll see you tomorrow, Mrs. Jeepers. Eddie grabbed Melody's arm and pulled her out the door. When they were safe on the other side of the street, Melody glared at Eddie. See, Mrs. Jeepers is weird. Do you believe us now? All right, maybe she's a little strange for wanting to live in the old Clancy place, but that doesn't mean she's weird, Eddie said. I don't know, Eddie, Melody warned. I think we'd all better watch out for Mrs. Jeepers. Chapter 4. Suspicions. Mrs. Jeepers was late for class the next morning. The students sat in their seats anxiously listening for her footsteps. Maybe she quit already, Liza suggested. Why would she quit? She's only been here one day. She hasn't gotten the full treatment yet, said Eddie. I don't think she quit either, Howie whispered. We saw her moving into the Clancy house yesterday. The Clancy house! Several other kids gasped. The place has been empty ever since I can remember, Carrie said. I heard it's haunted. Maybe a ghost ate her, Liza said. Or maybe she was bitten by a vampire. That's right, snapped Melody. I remember seeing the movie men carrying a box into the basement yesterday. So? Several children said. So, the box was shaped long and thin, like a coffin. She did say she was from Transylvania, Howie said. And isn't that where Count Dracula lives? A ghostly silence filled the room as the doorknob slowly turned. Everyone snapped to attention and Mrs. Jeepers came into the room. Good morning, class, Mrs. Jeepers said in her strange accent. I'm so sorry to be late, but I did not get much sleep last night. Melody's eyes grew wide and Howie's mouth dropped open. Vampires don't sleep at night, Melody whispered to Liza. Liza leaned over and said, yeah, but vampires don't wear polka dots either. Everyone looked at Mrs. Jeepers. It was true. She didn't look like a vampire today. She had on a bright pink and green polka dotted dress with bright green ribbon tied in her red hair. Her fingernails were even painted bright green, and at her neck was the green brooch still. Perhaps we better start with our lessons, Mrs. Jeepers suggested. We will begin with arithmetic, which is math. They used to call it arithmetic. The class opened their books. Not a sound could be heard as she explained the problems and did examples on the board. Eddie looked at his friends. They were being quiet too. Eddie wadded his math paper. The crinkling of the paper broke the silence. Several of his friends gasped as they turned to Eddie. Mrs. Jeeper didn't even flinch. Tap, tap, tap. Eddie drummed his pencil on a desk. He glanced at his friends and noticed that some of them were moving their lips as though they were praying. Mrs. Jeepers just wrote another problem on the board. Eddie started making goldfish noises with his mouth. The students sitting near him sunk low in their seats, but Mrs. Jeepers didn't notice. He watched the minute hands on the clock go around 3 times. Still, Mrs. Jeepers ignored him. His mouth began to get dry and his jaws felt as if he had been chewing a super wad of bubble gum for hours. This was too much. Eddie wasn't used to being ignored, especially by a teacher. Eddie stopped making goldfish noises and watched Mrs. Jeepers show the class how to work the problems for their assignment. He watched as she neatly wrote one number after another. Suddenly an idea came to him. He held his math book high in the air, then let it go. Bam! Everyone in the class jumped as the book fell to the floor with a thud. Everyone except Mrs. Jeepers. Oh, so slowly, Mrs. Jeepers ran her fingernails down the blackboard. Cold chills escaped down Eddie's neck and back. The screeching of her fingernails on the blackboard made everyone forget about Eddie's book falling to the floor. Turning, Mrs. Jeepers peered straight at Eddie. Calmly, and almost in a whisper, she spoke in her strange accent. That is quite enough, she said to him. So that was chapters 3 and 4. We'll do 5 and 6 tomorrow. So I'm going to send you some follow-up questions. I hope you guys are having a good day. I'm going to put some things on Google Classroom. Hopefully you want to look at them, some virtual tours or some exercises and stuff. Have a great day. I'll see you later. Bye.